Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
Hello and welcome to the Holy Moment Podcast, the podcast where we watch movies with you, discuss the moments that work, the moments that don't, and the moments that reflect truth in unexpected ways. Today we are discussing Andrei Rublev, the Soviet classic. It is a biographical historical drama directed by the one and only Andrei Tarkovsky. Excuse me, folks. Now, Tarkovsky is a name that many film buffs will probably know. He is one of, if not the most famous Soviet director. As for why he is particularly well known and appreciated, that's escaping me, although I'm sure we learned a lot about that in school. Do you remember anything from our film theory classes?
I thought you were saying it's escaping you because you watched his movie and you thought it sucked, and you're like, man, I don't know why they think this guy is the bee's knees. His movies suck.
No.
No. I when it comes to film theory and it comes to like what's the Soviets, I just remember all the Soviets montages. But I don't think I also cannot say this man's name. Tarkovsky. It's too hard. Names are hard. But anyways, I don't remember talking about Andrei specifically. I'm sure we did, but I don't remember talking about his body of work. And this is my first movie I've ever watched by him, so I'm pretty new to his body of work.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say. As far as montage is concerned and editing is concerned, this felt more naturalistic in its editing style. I don't know if you felt that as well, but I didn't really notice the editing as much. But I did notice some of the shots, some of the camera movements, and the uses of like dolly zooms, and that I found genuinely impressive. We saw some genuinely fantastic technical moves on the part of Tarkovsky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've the past few seasons we've had movies that were filmed in the 60s. I think all the movies I can think of them referencing were filmed in the 60s, but they're referencing an earlier part of history. And so whenever I'm watching them, I always have it in my mind that like, oh, this was filmed in the 1940s. This is so impressive. Don't get me wrong. Filming this in the 1960s is still a very impressive feat. But anytime we had like something up in the sky, like a helicopter drone looking shot, I'm like, wow, how did they get up there? What, like at the beginning with the balloon where the guy makes like the hot air balloon. I'm like, how are they filming this? There's some other really incredible like aerial shots. And so sometimes I forget like, okay, there's a big difference in filming a movie in the 1940s and the 1960s. Still incredibly impressive for when they filmed this film. But I think once you put something in black and white and it's in a different language, I'm like, this is so old. This is ancient.
No, it's so interesting because at the end when they switch to color, it's one of those moments that reminds you, oh, this was made a little later, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like Paper Moon, where they have it in black and white, but it was made in the 70s, and so you know that they had access to color film. Mm-hmm. It was an intentional choice to look back to an older era, and even then, black and white was indicative or evocative of older times.
Yeah, I think Paper Moon was one, because I think Paper Moon was depicting America in the 1940s. Come and See, I think, was also done in the 60s, 70s, and that was also depicting, World War I? No, World War II.
It was World War II.
World War II because of Hitler. And so that's the 40s?
Yeah, that was the 40s. Or maybe late 30s, early 40s.
And I'm afraid. I'm going to double check. Yeah, Come and See was 1985. So it was actually past 66. But yeah, so those three films, all filmed, with color available, and Come and See was done in color. But again, all done more recently, but are depicting a time period all kind of like in the 40s. Besides this one was the 1400s, not the 40s. But all that to be said, all three movies did a really good job of putting you in that era of time. So it's like, how did they get the camera so high, or how did they move it like that? Really, this movie had a masterclass in composition and the movement of the camera. And I'm definitely noticing that about, I think, like foreign films, but specifically films kind of 60s and before. A lot of them just have to be so intentional with how they move the camera and how they set up shots, and they're so beautiful.
So yeah, like you, this is the first Tarkovsky movie that I have seen, and having watched, I would say I think he belongs among the greats. I would say so. Again, as far as technical ability goes, this is a movie that I'd like to watch again, and really sink my teeth into in a deeper way.
I think this movie falls in the category like a lot of the older classics, where when I'm watching it, I always really appreciate on a technical level, and I can get a little bit lost in the sauce narratively. And it's usually once it's done, and I've done a little bit of research, and I can understand, kind of connect some flesh points together, that the story becomes whole to me, and I appreciate it more. But I won't lie, sometimes in the moments with these classic movies, I can either be bored or honestly more so frustrated with levels of confusion. And now I don't want to be like, oh, because they're famous and a great story, I'm going to excuse them for poor, quote unquote, poor storytelling. Now, some of it has to do with my own ignorance, and I'm sure maybe I was more lost than the average person. But sometimes they wouldn't, like, it's just hard when things are in black and white in a foreign film. And in a time period, Russia and the 1400s that you're not used to. I just had a hard time understanding who our main character was until like halfway through the movie. I really was like, this is who we're following. This is what he looks like. And so I think you're playing a little bit of catch up when it's not, made in the century you're used to in America, very verbatim, the type of film language you're used to. It takes a little bit of playing catch up. And so I think for that reason, narratively, it can be a bit frustrating. Even though in individual scenes, I'm like, I really like this, but how is this connecting the overall plot and of our characters? And I feel like at the end, I finally can kind of see that through line. But when I'm in the thick of it, I can get frustrated and be confused. But all that to be said, now that I'm through it, this isn't a movie I'm going to be barking up the tree to go watch again. But from a technical level, and I think now that I'm done with it, not even necessarily like plot wise, like you watch an exciting good movie for the plot. This was like, this movie said something, and I think what it said was important, and it's what films don't maybe often do enough. I don't need a film to be religious or political or have a philosophical take for it to be enjoyable, but I do think a movie that challenges us to think about something does maybe what cinema and the language of film can do better than other things. And so I have no issue with just watching a movie, going and watching The Raid for pure enjoyment. But when there is a movie that tackles these ideas, it doesn't feel like it's shoving you in your face, but more like presenting it and be like, what do you think of this? And it really makes you struggle with these concepts. I feel like I can appreciate the film more, even if it's a movie I'm not wanting to turn on, once every few months.
Yeah. And speaking of religious themes and politics, we have to discuss the fact that Andrei Rublev was a Soviet filmmaker. Rather, he was a citizen of the Soviet Empire, and he was a director of films. And so his films were under a lot of scrutiny by the government. In fact, the movie that we watched was, I believe, the longer version of this movie, the one that wasn't as cut up as per the requests of the officials that were screening these things. And what made this movie so transgressive was its emphasis on religion and its relationship with art, because the Soviet Union was an atheistic empire. That was their official religion, was the lack thereof. And religious belief, whether it was Buddhist or Christian or Muslim, was severely hampered in all sectors. And so for Tarkovsky to have made this movie about Andrei Rublev, who was a famous, real Russian iconographer, someone who made religious art, who was a monk, and who was declared a saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and for it to portray religion in not an entirely negative light, and in fact to, in some instances, insist upon its importance, it was transgressive. It was transgressive. And he ended up leaving the Soviet Union 10 years later, not solely due to this movie, but his art was feeling hampered, and eyes were on him.
And I love that. I feel like you can feel his struggle. You take away the context of him being in Soviet Russia at the time. But even in that, I love that you can feel the struggle of the artist in the medium. And I think it's hilarious because guess what we watched last week? Last week we watched Tick, Tick, Boom, which is a movie about an artist struggling with his art. And I love the, sorry if I'm using this phrase wrong, but the dichotomy, the juxtaposition between these two. Tick, Tick, Boom, this 21st century, highly emotional, highly crybaby, but person who can't get his shit together to make a musical. And he's kind of the starving, woe is me artist that we kind of see in this 21st century. And then we have Andrei Rublev, who is a tortured monk at the 1400s in Russia, who is having this crisis of faith as he views art as this beautiful thing to bridge humanity and God and connect them, but then is seeing these atrocities in the world and is having a hard time computing the two. And I just love how they're both about the artistic, creative endeavor, but completely different time periods, completely different lenses. I love it.
Yeah. One is competing to get into a workshop, and the other has taken a vow of silence because he's killed a man.
They are not the same. What is it? John? John is his name? Mm-hmm. Yeah, John and Andrei, you are not the same. not to diss on John. I really did enjoy the story of Rent and Tick, Tick, Boom. But I feel like Andrei Rublev had... I don't know a lot more. It was interesting because it was in the specific context of religious, being a creative in a religious output, where Tick, Tick, Boom was very much not, and it was more just the idea of what it means to be a creative. But I also like because Andrei Tarkovsky, not Andrei Rublev, he was, like you said, Jeffrey, he was a religious person. He was Russian Orthodox. And he also did not view filmmaking as a means of entertainment. He viewed filmmaking as a creative way to express his ideas with creation, with religion. And so this movie almost has like a meta layer where, very much like Tick, Tick, Boom last week, we talked about the meta layer and its conversation and creation and creativity. So just funny that they're back to back.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I just had this thought. Andrei Tarkovsky, filmmaker who is deeply influenced by his religious beliefs and communicated that and waxed philosophic about his art through that specifically religious lens. And he's talking about Andrei Rublev, right, the painter, who very much did the same. And then we have in the West, Andrei Bazin, who was a Catholic filmmaker who also was influenced by his belief in creation and a religious faith that informed his outlook. It was just all of these Andres. What's up with the name Andrei, right?
Yeah, all I'm learning is that I need to name my kid Andrei so that they can go be a famous artist in some capacity. Yeah. But it is interesting that, like, these two Andres, how they were Christians or religious people and how they engaged with the medium of creativity being filmmaking. This is not a fully baked potato, this thought I'm about to have. I just had it on the spot. But Jeffrey and I being Christians, and a lot of our filmmaker friends who are Christians, I feel like they always, and myself, express it of like, oh, well, I want to create stories that I think will connect with people, whether they're overtly Christian or whether they just have Christian themes and they mean something to me. I don't necessarily feel like Andrei Bazin and Andrei Tarkovsky view it as like, oh, I view it as a storytelling mechanic where I can tell Christian stories. It doesn't...
Yeah.
Would you agree? Like, that's not how they view this.
That's not... I think for them, their art and faith are fully integrated in such a way that they don't have to be writing about explicitly Christian themes in order for it to be infused with that Christian spirit, or in order for the Christian ethos to be the motivating fire behind the art.
Yeah.
Right?
And I could be wrong.
It doesn't even have to be a conscious thought of I'm going to make a movie that is subtly Christian. No. I mean, if you are a religious person and those beliefs, those values are important to you, that will show in whatever you do.
And I could be wrong, but I think I get the idea of like, which, and we were also talking about this last week with Tick Tick Boom, the idea of creating to satisfy the need to create, and creating with the need to satisfy the need to be seen. And I feel like these two Andres, they're much more in like, I don't create to tell Christian stories because I need them to be seen to further, the evangelism, but more it's like, I create because I was created by a creator, and it doesn't matter if people see these bodies of work. I just need to create. I don't know these two like filmmakers, or I guess Andrei Rublev was not a filmmaker, but I don't know these two creatives very well. But like that's what I get across from them and the bit of work and what I've read by them.
Yeah, I mean, Tarkovsky, there's a good quote that I want to read out, and he says, "It is a mistake to talk about the artist looking for his subject. In fact, the subject grows within him like a fruit and begins to demand expression." It's the interesting thing where the artist is not the one demanding expression. It's the subject that naturally grows within him. Right? And he goes on to say, the poet has nothing to be proud of. He is not master of the situation, but a servant. Creative work is his only possible form of existence, and his every work is like a deed he has no power to annul. For him to be aware that a sequence of such deeds is due and right, that it lies in the very nature of things, he has to have faith in the idea, for only faith interlocks the system of images.
Well, I just feel like that's a perfect reflection of Andrei Rublev, not Tarkovsky's, kind of character journey. And this idea of this internal creative born out of a religious creative being. And how Andrei Rublev starts, I would say, as a very... what's the right word? Maybe not dim-witted, but he means well, but kind of doesn't see the world for what it is. He's like, I just want to create these beautiful things. I'm not doing it out of greed. I'm not doing it for money. I just want to do it because I feel like it's the connection between me and God. And then as he begins to create, and he gets forced with these travesties, but like the first thing when he gets paid to go paint at this chapel, but the dude wants Judgment Day. He wants people burning in tar pits. And he's like, I don't think I can do this. I don't want people to see fear in my art. I want them to see the beauty that I see in God and creation. And so he is confronted. And then again with the war and the brutality, the murder, the rape and everything he sees. And then he himself is sullied when he kills the man. And he's like, well, now I have sullied the thing that God has given me, and I can no longer create art. But then I feel like where he ends the story, not Cecil, Krill, the other priest who is a greedy guy. I'm sure we'll get into his character later. But he kind of has that last call to action as Andrei has taken a vow of silence because he killed a man in self-defense. And Krill says, hey, look, throwing back to Amadeus. He's like, hey, look, I was not born with skill, but you were. Don't let it go to waste. And he's like, you have an innate talent and you creativity from God. It would be a waste not to use it. And so the full circle of Andrei sees it as God has given me this innate ability. It is not that I am selfish or I have to create for these immoral reasons, but because God has given it to me, it is just inside of me, and I want to put it on the outside for the rest of not even for the world, but because God has given it. Whether no one sees it or everyone sees it, I will use this skill. It's just innate.
Yeah. And, I'm so glad that you brought up Amadeus and the Kirill Salieri comparison, because I saw that too. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if Kirill is what Salieri could have been if he had chosen to repent and change his ways, right? Selfish, vain, he seeks after that which he cannot possess. But then he comes around to realizing, oh, this person has a gift and he ought to be using that gift.
Yeah. And I appreciate, though, even at the very end, Krill, because to give context, there were three monks to kind of the opening of the movie. It was Andrei, the one who was has this amazing innate ability and is modest and humble. his friend Danielle, which is a dude. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's the wiser one who maybe is a little bit more, not chastised, but what's the word? When you
More
like hardened.
Yeah. Strict, perhaps, or cynical.
Yeah, I guess a little bit cynical, but Philonopsis. Gosh, too many hard names to pronounce in this movie. But Felonies, he was the truly cynical one. But then the point is, then there's the third monk, Krill, and he was a jealous, envious person. And so his whole character arc is he's pissed off at Andrei because he's the talented one. He runs away and he shows up at the end of the movie. And he is true. He does tell Andrei, like, hey, look, you have this talent. Don't squander it. And he does truly repent. And he's like, look, I just want peace for my wretched, evil soul. Let me back into the monastery. But I do like, even at the very end, you still get the idea of like, maybe he's better than Salieri, but he's still a little bit of a petty bitch. He's still a little bit envious, and he's aware of it. He's like, look, I'm trying to be better. I'm not perfect. That's why I'm here at the monastery trying to repent because I'm a sinful person.
That's realistic. That's as much as you can ask for, right? Is if you have a long-standing vice and you acknowledge that you have that problem, the best thing that you can do is take that first step. And that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that he's like, please, like, let me repent to the head monk that he like chastised at the opening of the movie and kicked him out. And the head monk is like, okay, fine. You can stay if you translate the Bible 14 times. And he's like, oh, you're so gracious. Great as you. And then later on at the end, when he's talking to Andrei, he's like, it's kind of unfair that he's making me do it 14 times. That seems a little much. I feel like he's kind of complaining about it. And so I really did like his character. I thought, like you said, something that this movie does a good job is they're three-dimensional characters. Everyone feels real. Like they're all struggling with these things, but there's no like, what's the right word? At the end of the day, no one usually has a perfect a pretty bow. It's like they usually struggle with these vices, and maybe by the end they have a better understanding of themselves, but they still have to live with the vices.
Yeah, no, and a character that I found very compelling is the young man whom they hire to make the bell. Right, his father dies, and the father has all of the secrets, the trade secrets that will make it possible to make this beautiful bell. And the young man is like, well, I have it. I mean, don't kill me, sir, because I have the secrets. If you kill me, the secrets die with me. And they're like, okay, well, you'd better make the best darn bell that we've ever seen, or else you're going to face some pretty nasty consequences. And he starts running this operation with a lot of swagger, with a lot of pomp and arrogance almost. But as the story progresses, we see little cracks in his facade. We see him getting more and more anxious, especially as they're about to reveal the bell, and the bell is revealed, and he's hugging it, and he's very tenderly caressing it. And then later they haul the bell up, and they're seeing if it'll ring, and there's a real anxiety that we feel in him. And once the bell rings successfully, people are cheering, people are proud, people are happy, and he is collapsed on the floor and he's crying. And in that moment, he confesses to Andrei, listen, I never knew those secrets. He didn't pass it to me. I did this all on my own, and I'm a fraud. And at that moment, Andrei's like, who cares at this point, right? Maybe you lied. That was not good. But you have a genuine talent, right? And what a waste it would be if we didn't see more of that. And so he gives him a call to action. He's like, I'm going to start making icons again. You're going to make the bells for the churches that I decorate. Let's do this together. And then, the rest is history. Mm-hmm. But I just found his story so compelling.
I do think the third act might have been my favorite. And I have a lot to say about it, but before then, I want to say this because otherwise I'm going to forget. You know what? When they brought this enormous bell, and it's, guys, this bell is like the size of like a car, like it's big. They bring it out of the pit, out of the mold. They've made it in the ground, and they hoist it up. and the whole town is watching them, see if it will ring or see if it cracks. You know what that scene reminded me of?
What?
It reminded me of the scene in There Will Be Blood when, what's the actor's name?
Daniel Day-Lewis?
Yes. When Daniel Day-Lewis's character, I think we're kind of entering into the second act, and he shows up in the town, and Paul Dano's character is there, and he is the priest, and the whole town gathers round, and it's the scene where the priest, Paul Dano's character, is supposed to give a speech, but then Daniel Day-Lewis' character kind of just shrugs him off, and he goes up and cuts the ribbon, and then oil starts pumping, and the whole town is like, yay, oil. It just reminded me of that scene, so I wanted to say that. Again, I love watching movies, and for us to be able to pull these connections and all these threads, it just makes me excited because it means I'll make better movies in the future. But the point is, I think why this final act, again, another great movie where it's very clearly first, second, third act. I think they even break it in with tile screens, first part, second part, third part. Very easy to follow. Why I like this is because this scene/act fully brought the narrative full picture. Like I said, throughout the movie, I was kind of struggling to really pinpoint what was going on when, like whether it was continuity-wise, like what time period we were in, because they were jumping, mass like 6-7 years at a time in the story points and the characters. And this was no difference. We enter this third act, and now we're following this random boy, that the bell maker that we hadn't seen at all up until this point. And we don't see Andrei for the first like 20-30 minutes of this act. And he's been our main character this whole point. And so at first I was frustrated. I was like, I don't know what we're doing here. But then Andrei just shows up at the Bell building site, and he's just watching. And he's just watching. He doesn't really, he's taking his vow of silence after killing the man, so he doesn't say anything. And he's just watching this boy create. And then I feel like that's when everything really clicked for me. I think a major point of the movie, a theme, is different ways of viewing creation and creativeness, but specifically a big part of it was being creative in the face of adversity. Think about it. The movie opens up with this monk or this guy making a hot air balloon. He gets on this hot air balloon, and people are chasing him down because it's viewed as witchcraft. It's viewed as heresy to the gods. And he gets on this hot air balloon, and for maybe a minute or two, he's above it all, and he's excited. And then he crashes, and he either is dead or is taken to jail. We don't see any of those characters again. Okay, next scene, we have a jester in a little barn who's making everyone laugh, everyone filled with joy, and he's making jokes. Well, Cyril, the cynical monk we talked about, he turns him in. He goes to jail for 10 years, all because he was creating art and filling the people he loved with joy. And then we have Andrei and all of the other artists in the movie who are consistently up against literal death sometimes for creating their art. And so over time and time again, you see people trying to create art in adversity. And I feel like that's what gets Andrei out of his vow of silence. Because his vow of silence is a genuine vow of silence, like trying to repent for killing someone. But it's also, you can tell, a little bit like hiding out of grief. He went through a horrible tragedy watching all these people be murdered in front of him. So he's kind of hiding and like, I'm not going to do art anymore. And I think it's watching this boy bullshit his way through this and just do it by the skin of his teeth in the face of it. Like if the bell cracks, he's going to be killed. What greater adversity can you face? And the fact that he decided, obviously at the end of the day, he had to do it, but like he didn't have to go with those men. And I don't know if he necessarily went with those men because the men were going throughout cities looking for bell makers because the king wanted a beautiful bell, but all the bell makers had died from a plague, but they found this one kid who was the son of a bell maker. Maybe you could just argue he did it because he wanted the prestige and like, it's like, if I just stay in this town, I'm going to die like everyone else. But the fact that he was willing to put everything on the line to create and to push himself further in life, I think really spoke to Andrei. And in that moment, it just made me click the whole film about this idea of creating in the adversity of real life issues, from something small to like maybe being judged to something like you might be killed if you create this. And so I really like that third scene for bringing a full picture for me.
Yeah, it's almost as if his art had a salvific power of its own in its own way. It's his art that saves him literally, but it's the art that also saves him spiritually. But, it's interesting, that opening prologue with the flying monk. There is an actual story, I believe, that I've read about, is an Irish monk who was obsessed with this idea of flying. And he actually built himself a contraption that would allow him to fly, or at least he theorized it did. And so he had all of his fellow monks gather around as they watched him jump off of this building, and he flew. He flew for like a few seconds until he landed, and I think he ended up being permanently crippled. But there are records of that monk still cheerfully talking to his buddies about that time that he flew, and there wasn't any bitterness in him at all afterwards. A beloved member of the community. Now, I may have gotten details incorrect because this is something that I read a while ago, but it seems clear to me that Tarkovsky was taking some inspiration from this story, and the fact that this guy, he created something, and this creation, it was to overcome an obstacle, that obstacle being our inability to fly, and it resulted in its own pains, unique pains. But at the end of the day, it was worth it. It was worth it. Mm-hmm. So,
I also love these older movies depicting of men. Again, there's nothing wrong with the depiction of men and the creative world in Tick, Tick, Boom. I think that's a completely valid side of the coin of creativeness. Totally. But I really like these older movies, and we see these men who are creative juggernauts of their space. They are the painters, they are the bell makers, they are the sculptors, they are the pottery makers. And they're not, there's nothing wrong to be filled with emotion. Like, I'm not judging, 21st century men who are creatives are all filled with that. No, there's nothing wrong with that. But I love that their emotion is so deeply condensed down into this fine skill that I have spent years of my life creating. And they feel like these men who are passionate, and maybe they're not as emotional, passionate in certain ways like creative men in the 21st century, but you can still tell they care about what they're doing. They're deeply moved by what they are doing. And just another example of that and the consequences is Andrei was working with some sculptors, and they were sculpting this temple for one of the princes. But they decided that they were going to go work for the prince's brother because he paid better or for whatever reason. And the prince sent assassins and gouged out all of their eyes. And so I like that it's also portrayed as like art isn't just a frivolous thing to these people. It's a lifelong skill, and it is something that is respected and renowned so much that you're willing to kill over it in those periods. I think kind of like how Amadeus, how we had, what was it, the king of Britain at the time, or wherever Amadeus happened.
It was the Emperor of Austria.
So close I was. The Emperor of Austria, and how Amadeus and Salieri were like his second, like they were very highly revered. They weren't his lieutenant generals of the army or the head of his cabinet on like the government, but they were creative positions that were really well respected. And so I think that's a really cool depiction of creative people throughout history. But again, you need both sides of the coin, because it's just an evolution. And not just an evolution, because you think evolution, you start kind of crappy and you evolve into something better, but more just different time periods on what we emphasized when it comes to being creative. But I like this time period because we don't see it as much, this version of creativeness.
Yeah, we should have more court composers and court poets. I think that's what poet laureates are, if memory serves.
I also think
a US,
if you do a bad job, we should send assassins after you to really put credence, in the arts again. If you make a bad short film, we're going to cut off your leg.
Yeah. Or if you decide to make a short film for my fierce rival.
Yeah. If I have like a production designer and Jeffrey hires her under my nose, I'm going to go cut her eyes out so they can never see art again.
You have some Disney filmmakers or a director that's working with Disney. It's like, I'm actually going to make a movie for A24. Better watch out, sir.
Yeah.
You're treading dangerous waters.
How are you going to direct without a tongue? Dun, dun, dun. Also, it would suck to live in the 1400s in Russia. That jester at the beginning of the movie who was, singing a crass, crude song about maybe the government, they put him in jail for 10 years and cut his tongue out. That seems like a bit of a overreaction. But I guess I'll leave you in those days where political, like the power was changing at any given moment. I'm sure it was a lot bigger deal, the opinion of a governmental official, like a king or a prince. And it's so, I can imagine it's been a lot more fearful of people talking ill about you, because all it does is take a few rumors and all of a sudden your people are overthrowing you or sending assassins or no longer listening to you, not paying taxes. So I guess I understand it.
Yeah. No, and so little checks and balances. I mean, the justice system was so underdeveloped in certain places. I know in the 1200s, King Louis IX of France, he introduced the idea of trial by jury, but he also abolished the very popular practice of trial by combat and trial by ordeal, where the idea wasn't that, we're going to have these two people fight and whoever wins is going to, I guess, get the better of this case, whether they're guilty or not. The idea was these two people are going to fight, and if one guy loses, that means that he was in fact guilty, because God would surely preserve the innocent man. Yeah. And trial by ordeal was something similar, where they're like, okay, we're going to throw this man into a coursing river. And if he drowns, then he's guilty. And if he doesn't drown, well, I guess he was telling the truth.
Because that's what they would do with witches, right? If she's not a witch, she won't drown. If she's not a witch, she won't be lit on fire to some degree.
Yeah. And like, people weren't as developed as far as swimming techniques back then. Like, if you watch an older movie and you see them doing a breaststroke, which is what the nude lady was doing in that one scene where they're being chased by the guards and she swims past the boat, that wasn't a thing. That wasn't like a known technique back then. Mm-hmm. She'd likely just be kind of dog paddling or just flailing.
It just makes me think of, like, when you were talking about trial by combat, if we still had it, anytime we had like a claims dispute on YouTube and I go to dispute it, they just said like their beefiest lawyer to beat the crap out of me, to be like, no, you don't own that song. But
that would make for a cool anime.
that would be like, really interesting anime where it's like all the superheroes in the world are just like corporate people that go fight on your behalf of like lawsuits.
Yeah, like all the lawyers, your lawyers like your stand.
Yeah. Just like
I haven't seen much JoJo, but
but speaking of witches burning and nude women swimming, what was your? I think what started to throw me off was, again, I wasn't really nailed down into the story, was having trouble following it, and then we have this long right kind of enter into the second act where you should be getting your teeth into the story, having an understanding. He goes and like hangs out with witches. And what did you? I'm just curious. I feel like there might be like an obvious answer, and maybe if that's the obvious answer to you, that's fine. But what do you think Andrei, the director, was trying to do by interjecting Andrei, our character, into this like den of witches? So kind of early on in the movie.
Yeah, Andrei Rublev kind of stumbled onto the scene and got involved in a lot of events that he otherwise wouldn't have been involved with. Them tying him up in crucifixion formation, and her kissing him, both things unconsensual. I think it was to further emphasize the wickedness of the world in which Andrei Rublev inhabited. Not only was it displaying the wickedness of the Satanists and the witches who were having their Sabbath, it was also calling to attention the wickedness of those that were violently persecuting them as well. Mm-hmm. It challenges Rublev's idea of, we are one nation, we are one blood, we ought to love one another, we ought to care for one another. Well, these are the people that we ought to care and love for. And not only must we care for these witches and Satanists, but we also have to care for those that are persecuting them, right? And we have to care for the whole package, and that's difficult. And as the movie goes on, like, it becomes more and more and more difficult until it culminates in a crisis of faith.
And I think why, looking back, I like that scene. Maybe in the moment if I didn't realize it, I think you're right. It paints the world in a gray area of like the satanic people are evil, but the people pursuing them are also doing it out of evil, too far one way. But also, I think it contextualizes our main character, Andrei Rublev, who is this monk. And furthermore, I think it contextualizes the director. And this is what I mean by that. I think if this was like a different religious director, it would have been so obvious. These satanic, witch, nude people are just evil and they're bad, and this is our good, innocent monk that they molested. End of story. In a non-religious hands, it would have been the opposite. That little philosophical conversation he had with the woman that kissed him, they were talking about love, and he's like, this is not the love that God ordained. And she's like, why does it matter? It's love. So they're kind of having this philosophical idea of what love is. And I feel like if it was in the hands of a non-religious director, that would have been their stance of like, hey, your religion's too uptight. It doesn't actually encompass love for everyone. You're wrong. It would have been, so either or would have been black and white. But I appreciate that Andrei Tarkovsky almost seemed like he was putting his own struggle in the mix with this conversation. And Andrei Rublev, like, again, the witches aren't in the right and the people pursuing them aren't in the right. But I feel like Andrei Rublev got put in that position out of probably lustful curiosity, or at the bare minimum, morbid curiosity. He saw what they were doing. I don't think he had to go and follow them. And then not only did he go and get way too close to everything, once he went back and found his group of people, he lied to them. They're like, where are you at? It's like, the brush is so thick, because there was guilt there. And sure, maybe it's guilt out of kind of being molested by this woman, but I think it's more guilt out of, why are you there in the first place? Why did you stick around? And if you did go, why didn't you go and say, I went and I tried to tell them about the Lord Almighty, and I tried to convince them that they are sinful. Like, why didn't you tell them that? But I think it's because Andrei is realizing the world is a little more complicated than he thought. And not in a sense of like, well, therefore his faith is in jeopardy, but just him having this more understanding of what he believes and why he believes it. So I think it just allowed Andrei Rublev's character to be a more nuanced character. And I appreciate that for that reason.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's challenging his notion of love. And by the end of it, he realizes love isn't what they were saying it was. And love isn't also what the soldiers were doing who were persecuting them. Love is something else. Love is something unique. Love is something harder.
Yeah. And so, again, in the moment, I had trouble with certain scenes, but I think looking back, every scene built upon itself in the character building of Andrei Rublev, or in the thematic theme of what does it mean to be creative, especially in a religious pursuit. And so for all those reasons, I really do appreciate it more on a retrospective.
And, speaking of lies, he tells that lie near the end of that act, but at the beginning of that act, if it's the same act, if I'm remembering correctly, isn't he having a conversation with his apprentice about his apprentice's vice that is lying? He has a tendency to lie, a penchant to lie.
Yeah.
He's like, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. And then we end the act, and he has told a lie of omission. He has told the direct lie of, like, I was here when I was actually there.
Yeah. I speaking of his apprentice, I really love the relationships they have, because at the top of the kind of hierarchy, you have Theophasis. How do you say his name?
Theophanes.
Theophanes. He is the master of masters. He is the best. And then under him, you have Andrei, who is a prodigy and who is amazing. And then under him, you kind of have a lazy, not very skilled Famo, whatever, the one Jeffrey was just talking about, the one that is lying. And then you have a scene where he yells at, like, another boy, because the boy is complaining. It's like, it's hot. I just want to go to the pool. And the apprentice comes in and is like, well, then just go to the pool. Just get out of here. Clearly, like, the top person is, the master is yelling at the apprentice is yelling at, like, the chore boy is yelling at, like, the child. And I just thought it was funny watching their dichotomy kind of play out.
It's like, I don't know if you've seen that famous image. It's like a Facebook image of like a cartoon. There's the boss who's yelling at the middle manager, and then the middle manager's looking downcast, and then we see the middle manager yelling at the employee, and the employee's looking downcast, and then we see the employee at home yelling at his child, and the child is looking downcast, and then I think you see the child yelling at the dog.
Yeah,
and it just
and I've seen it where it's like then the child that is goes and yells at his dad, and the dad is the boss at the beginning. And I assume it's been around a lot longer, but I first got introduced to that concept in an episode of How I Met Your Mother called The Screaming Chain, The Screaming Ladder, or something like that. And that's just how they explained it. But yeah, I thought that was funny watching them kind of just scream at each other, kind of philosophically, and then kind of just like as a, I'm an old angry person, I'm going to yell at you.
Yeah. We should have apprenticeships nowadays in the arts.
Yeah.
Like, film school's great, but what if you just followed a famous director around and he taught you the ropes, and then you took on a little buddy later on?
It'd be nice. And imagine if that was like paying you a livable wage. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't got to be rich, but you know, maybe I can buy groceries.
Artists used to have patrons, rich patrons that would spend exorbitant amount of money to keep you doing your thing.
Yeah, I mean that's why we watch Mozart. You know, the whole movie trying to get a patron, but now you just got to get on Twitch and stream, and you can get patrons there.
Exactly, or OnlyFans.
Or OnlyFans. That's true. Which was originally for chefs and like coaches and stuff like that. Like OnlyFans was originally not for the adult industry, but then as soon as the adult industry got a hold of it, it's like 99.9% of it is adult entertainment. But yeah, it was originally for like, oh, I want to like create content, content for like, I'm going to post like a bunch of cooking lessons, or I'm going to coach you on football, or I'm going to do a bunch of like specific knitting things. But
well, whatever they're cooking on there now, it's definitely not food.
Yeah. I will say not better for humanity, but a much better money industry. Like, not to say that's good, but I digress. I guess one of the sections we talked kind of about the beginning and the end, but the middle is, I think, some of the most visually stunning and memorable bits. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, just the epic scale of this Tartar attack on the town where Andrei Rublev has finished his paintings, and the fact that a Russian has sold out the Russian people, and that really challenges Rublev's idea of the oneness of the Russians and their blood and their nation, and their people. I wondered how many of those are trained actors. I wonder where they source their actors.
Yeah,
because I know Italian neorealism, they would grab anyone, everyone, and that was a thing in the West. I don't know how common that was in the East, in Soviet Russia.
Especially for some of those wide shots, like the bell at the end. The third act talked about those, like the whole town gathered, and then for the second act with this siege on the town and everyone running around. Yeah, I mean, you see hundreds of people. There was like a really, really wide shot outside of kind of the courtyard outside of the main castle, and everyone's running away as like the siege is kind of calming down, and it's just massive. There's just so many people, and so yeah, I do wonder. You know, back then before they had really the internet, and you just get on like backstage and be like, hey, we need 10,000 people to show up on this day. How'd they do that?
Yeah. Oh, but yes, I think that just the movement of bodies across the screen and the flames and the horses. I'd feel so bad for the horses because I'm sure that those are real horses that genuinely got injured.
Yeah. Specifically that shot they cut to, and they're like on this scaffolding, and this horse is falling down. I'm like, oh, that's kind of dangerous. And then all of a sudden I realize there's blood pouring out of it, which I assume was fake. But this is also like Russia, so who knows what they were doing. And then the horse, like at the bare minimum, it falls off of the scaffolding, and I'm like, that looked real. So even if it's fake blood, I don't think horses do well from a 10-foot drop. And so that I think that specific shot was one of the most impressive like stunts, and it was with an animal, because I'm like, man, how do they do that?
Impressive's definitely one word for it. I think that horse was probably turned into glue afterwards.
Yeah, probably, because it's in the same vein of like these weird Soviet movies where they like I feel like in that witch scene, I feel like they had like children running around naked, and I feel like that's just something you can do in the '60s in Russia and be okay with it. So if you're fine putting naked children on screen, I feel like you might actually slit a horse's throat. I have no idea. I'll probably look it up after we're done with the podcast, but I wouldn't put it past them.
They did that in the 70s in the U.S. as well. I mean, think of Superman, the original Superman movie, where baby Clark Kent is lifting the truck, and then we just see his thing just...
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Vaguely. I know you do better than I do, Jeffrey, but it's okay. I understand.
Because I'm a big Superman fan. I just want to clarify, folks. That's why I remember it.
Sure, yeah. But I want to talk about the scene, but I got to point out a funny thing. My wife loves dogs, and there was an Australian Shepherd kind of in the first act where Krill was really jealous that Telemorphosy, the master artist, was like, you know what, screw you. I was going to have you, Krill, come work with me, but I'm just going to ask Andrei because he's clearly better. And so Krill is like, you know what, all of you suck at this monk monastery. You're old liars and cheats. I'm out of here. And he leaves the town, and he gets out of the town, and this cute Australian Shepherd follows him. And I'm thinking, oh, it's a classic. He's a bitter old man. He's going to take the dog with him. So I'm like, hey, look, wife, look at the cute dog. She looks up. The cute dog is running, and then Krill starts beating the shit out of it with a stick. And I was like, oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't know that was going to happen. So I was like, oh, man, those Russians, crazy.
Oh, it's not funny, but it is funny. Because he's talking to these monks. He's like, you're hypocrites, vicious and evil, and that you have turned this place into a den of thieves. And then he goes and beats a dog.
Yeah, not a very likable man, but maybe a relatable man.
Yeah. We've all beat a dog or two.
For sure. But yeah, I really enjoyed after the siege and the massacre of the Mongolians and the Russian brother that betrayed his brother, and they killed everyone. And the only people that are left in the entire city or like in the entire temple was Andrei and the deaf mute girl that he kind of vaguely adopts until she just gets kidnapped. But that's not in this scene. But I liked when it's just him surrounded by dead bodies and he has a conversation with the ghost of his old master, Telepouthifis. And I enjoyed them having that conversation because when he was alive, they had these like moral, philosophical, religious conversations. And then he has like one last one with his ghost. And do you remember that conversation?
I do. Because Theophanes, he's trying to provide some measure of comfort to Andrei Rublev, and is reflecting, I think, Andrei's core convictions back to him, even in this moment when Andrei is seriously doubting them. He mentions, I was wrong then, I'm right now. And when he says I'm right, he is, of course, referring to Andrei Rublev's own words that he echoed to Theophanes as like a counterpoint to the cynicism that he was expressing. And, of course, like this is either a vision or a figment of Andrei Rublev's imagination. And if we take it to be a figment of Rublev's imagination, that's the two sides of him that are warring. Right, these are some deeply held convictions from the voice of a man that I deeply respected, and then here are my own tortured feelings that are tearing me apart. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, she's just going through just witnessed this massacre and just dealing with that cynicism of like, how can God create anything good, and if He did, I'm not a part of that because I just killed a man in this whole debacle. And so kicking off that 15-year long vow of silence. And so, yeah, I think one of my favorite shots is, I think it's the same guy. I'm 99% sure. The apprentice that Rublev had, that he called lazy and a liar, who eventually left because Rublev refused to finish painting the chapel because, again, he morally had an issue with it because it was like painting hell. He's like, I don't want to paint this. And the boy was like, you know what? I got an offer at this other town to paint this other church. Screw you guys. I'm out of here. And is that the kid that shot with the arrow?
Yeah.
Okay, I was pretty sure it was. So his apprentice gets killed in this siege of the town. But it's this beautiful shot if he's running into a river and gets shot from behind, and the water just splashes up at the camera in such a way. And like, I've seen water interact with a camera. It's always impressive and I love it. But just like how the water splashes at the lens as he gets shot and then falls into the water is so beautiful. It was such a visually stunning image.
I loved a lot of the water shots in this movie. In fact, there's one where we focus on a canteen that is spilled in a puddle of water, and whatever liquid
It's milk.
is in the canteen, it's milk. It's dispersing in the water in a gorgeous way. And this movie, at several points, justified the black and white through such compositions. Because, you know, when you can work with color, black and white has to be a choice. And there are things that you can do with black and white that you can't do with color, and vice versa. But it requires a certain thoughtfulness. And I think a shot like that was perfect for black and white.
I think, we've watched a handful of black and white movies on the podcast. Some are justified, some I don't think are. I do think Tarkovsky approached his cinematography and his black and white like a Kurosawa. I feel like both of them had amazing composition, amazing movement in their frame, whether it's the camera or people or objects within the frame. A lot of elemental, a lot of rain moving in the frame, a lot of wind. But then also the use of black and white to be almost a character, the contrast, the grittiness of it. It felt like it would draw your eye's attention in a more meaningful way than if it was colored. And some movies like Come On with Joaquin Phoenix, the A24 film, we discussed that for the first season of the podcast. And I feel like that movie didn't have to be black and white. I'm not saying it was bad because it was, but I don't feel like it necessarily needed to be. And also, it was a black and white. And again, there's not a right or wrong way to do black and white. It's a stylistic thing. I think there's a lot of creative ways to do it. But if I remember correctly, it was a little more smooth. What I love about this movie, Tarkovsky's movie, and a lot of Akira Kurosawa's movie are the grittiness, the contrast, the graininess that your eye is pulled to in different locations because of the black and white and the use of it.
Yeah. And, it's also so interesting, too, that they chose black and white for a movie about a painter, of all things. And I think that the effect that is created at the end when we start seeing the actual icons in full color, it is a powerful one. It allows us to experience the art that he was making throughout the film, but due to the rough circumstances of his life, everything feels gritty. But we are shown at the end, this is what resulted from that, and that was a worthwhile fruit.
And it was so clearly a creative choice because Andrei Rublev has been talked about in the movie by everyone as being a great painter. I don't actually know if we ever see him paint in the movie. We see things he ends up painting when we first see him in his room. He's surrounded by paintings. We eventually do see the chapel that he ends up painting. But I can't actually bring to mind a scene where he is doing the painting. And so I think, again, it's this idea of black and white where he is having a crisis of faith throughout this entire film, of faith and what it means to be a creative individual. And we never see him really overcome that in the movie till the very, very end. And then we actually see his real painting. And when we see his real paintings, it's in color. So I think that's just another story element tied to a stylistic choice of black and white.
Yeah. This Tarkovsky guy, he's really, he's got it, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he's going places.
I do love when it's like you can recognize, okay, this isn't the most entertaining film. I think it is an entertaining film. I really do. I think every scene is pretty engaging, but it's not entertaining in the normal sense. But I think these directors so much understand the language of cinema and use it to its greatest ability. And that transcends an enjoyable, engaging movie. Again, your movie should be enjoyable, should be engaging. But like Pacific Rim is so enjoyable. It's so engaging. I don't think it's necessarily using the language of cinema to make me feel new things, teach me lessons, and make me struggle with aspects of humanity that these other great directors are able to do. And so, yeah.
You leave some movies feeling entertained, and you leave other movies feeling fed. This is the kind of movie that leaves you feeling fed.
100%, yeah.
And then some dig into your stomach and rip the food right out of you. It's like you just feel empty. It's, what is life? Why am I here? I feel sullied somehow.
Yeah.
I think Super Babies, Baby Geniuses, that might have been...
And I'm afraid for your next movie with Rugrats, I feel like that's going to happen again too.
No, I'm actually kind of hopeful for that. I think that one's going to be fun. I don't think it'll be my favorite. I watched the Rugrats some growing up, but...
We should bring alcohol to that episode.
Yeah.
But before you get too sidetracked, some of my favorite shots. Oh, again, I said it, but I'll just say it in more explicitness. I love when movies put so much thought into the frame. Every single shot, there is something in the foreground, there's something in the midground, there's something in the background, and there's some type of movement. I think it was one of the first 15 minutes, but it floored me. The first scene is that monk on the hot air balloon. The second scene is our three main monks that we talked about going to the barn to get out of the storm, and the jester is there, and he's fooling around, singing the song, and then Krill turns him in. And then the next scene, the three monks are leaving. We see them kind of cross frame. It's a very pretty frame. There's the monks in the foreground, kind of in the midground. There's some trees in the background. There's a lake, and it's like, oh, it's a solid shot. But then they went through the extra mile to, in the way background, they have the police officers that have taken away the jester in the way background crossing. And they're like, you only see them every once in a while because they're kind of in between trees. So it's this new added layer of texture. And just almost every shot has this. And it's amazing. And it just brings me back to this story I have where, long story short, I was talking to a DP and I was mentioning like, oh, this is cinematic is shallow depth of field. And he's like, no, go watch any old movie. Cinematic can be shallow depth of field, but that's only been in the new 21st century. And you go look at this movie, so much wide depth of field. You can see everything, foreground, midground, background, and they use it to the fullest advantage. Things moving around, rivers, rain, people, items, bells, weapons. It was all great. But I think some of my specific favorite shots were those two I mentioned, the one where the apprentice gets shot and the water splashes up, and then the one where the monks walk in front and then the police are in the background, just because that really sold me on what type of movie it was going to be. There was a wide shot where it's kind of an aerial. Again, I don't know how they got it, but it's this aerial of the town during the siege, and you see everyone freaking out, and you see these two ducks fly into frame in the foreground. And I was like, man, someone had to like release those ducks right at that moment. And so just a gorgeous, gorgeous film through and through.
Really is. And, I'm actually curious, Nathaniel, after having watched all of these movies, after having talked to DPs, excuse me, do you have a preference now for deep depth of field over shallow? Or when you make a film, what kinds of shots are you typically gravitating towards?
I think it depends on the type of movie you're making. Obviously, you can juxtaposition and take some cinematography that normally goes with a romance movie and then put it into an action movie, and I think that can work. I think obviously it's not done frequently because it doesn't always work, but I think anything can be done in film, it can be done well, is all I'm trying to say. I think when it comes to beautiful, slow-moving things, I will probably lean more towards a deep depth of field, being able to see everything. I do think in this newer age of cinema, I do like my shallow depth of field, especially like in quicker action movies. I think it just makes more sense. But again, I'm all for seeing both versions. I think it's really cool when you see cinematography in the type of genre that you normally wouldn't expect it to be there. And so I think you should blend both. And for me, that's what I tried to do with my big, most recent short film. It was a big action set piece type of short film, but I really want to integrate wide shots with deep depth of field and to really sit in the moments. I love a static shot. Maybe there's a little bit of a push or a pan or something, yada, yada, but I love just like a wide static. I'm a big fan of those. I think I'm always a bigger fan of moving things within a frame than moving the frame itself. Obviously, it's contextualized in the moment. Like, it depends on the moment what you need. And there's so many great things to do with cameras and the reason to move a camera. There's so many reasons to do it. But in general, I think it's a cooler thing to have a wide shot that's stationary and have things moving around within it that then makes it visually interesting than vice versa. Than having things more static. And hey, Jeffrey and I are having a conversation, but the camera goes from a 2-shot to an over-the-shoulder over to a wide shot. That can be done and it can be interesting, but I think it's cooler to sit it down at an over-the-shoulder, start as an over-the-shoulder, then I get up and move to a wide shot, and then we get a move to a close-up on Jeffrey's face because the actors moved rather than the camera moved. I think that is more the language of cinema than vice versa.
No, I'm with you there. Well, I like it when I like long shots where characters move and it goes from a medium to a wide to a close up. And then I also like it when the camera moves as like a scene transition almost. And so I guess what I'm saying is I like a nice mix, but I prefer longer shots.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. You know what we need to watch? We've been watching a lot of old films that are beautiful and slow. I want to go watch a really artistically well-crafted new 21st century movie, and the director that immediately comes to mind, I want to go watch some... Oh, who did Scott Pilgrim? I can never...
Edgar Wright?
Thank you. I want to go watch some Edgar Wright films. I love... I think that's another person. It's very different than these older movies, but I think Edgar Wright understands the language of cinema and uses editing, uses cinematography to its fullest. And I love the quick beats. I love the quick edits. And so just to kind of talk about this, I was like, that would be such a great juxtaposition to this type of movie.
Yeah, we can make that into a category for next season, maybe.
Yeah, big fan of Edgar Wright. He's a great director.
Well, with that being said, folks, Andrei Rublev, what a movie. Nathaniel. Yeah, I'll do the typical order. What was your holy moment?
It's so funny. With these old movies, I'll watch them and I'll walk away being like, man, only someone with a stick up their ass could like that. Do I like it for the cinematography? Yes. But other than that, I don't get why people rant and rave. But it really is these harder to digest movies that I have to talk through them and can see the genuine intentionality with the storytelling and the appreciation for not saying everything, pointing to the nose of what everything is, that I had come away with such a deeper respect for it. So my original answer was going to be the cinematography because I've not watched a beautiful movie like that in quite a while. But I really do think it is the director's, Andrei Tarkovsky's understanding of the language of cinema. I know that sounds very douchey and maybe kind of nebulous, but I just love that he told this story that was his own wrestling with what it meant to be a creative and put it into the story and threaded it all along beautifully. And not to say there weren't holes or there wasn't some confusion and it felt messy, but it felt messy in a way that life was and an actual representation. And it felt just different than most movie watching experiences, I feel. And I know that's not the most concrete answer, but I think it is just his understanding of how to make a movie and then the putting together of this movie and how it didn't feel like a beat for beat obvious, oh, the character development is here, here, and here. And it was messy and it was complicated. And it wasn't perfectly wrapped by the end. And I think that's just so true to real life. And I love that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I find that the movies I enjoy the most, the movies that I love the most, are the ones that might be hard upon first watch to digest. It, the most rewarding cinematic experiences is when you can reflect on a thing, talk to others about it, and then truly gain a deeper appreciation for it than you would have the movie that you really enjoyed that first time, but it's really just a cheap thrills kind of ride.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And I think I'll throw this in there last minute as well, because it's not for better or for worse, but I think a lot of the standard story structure that we see in the Western world, you either need a definitive answer, like most movies. Most movies have like a clear character arc and then there's an answer, whether it's a plot answer or like a character development answer. I was a greedy guy and now I love my family. We need to know how to get out of the Matrix, and we got out of the Matrix. Or sometimes they can leave it open-ended, like vaguely Inception, or they're still in the dream or whatever, or there's more open-ended films. But I do think just how they approach films, with it being a very classically structured narrative, we're going to take you into a suspension of disbelief world, whether it's crazy Star Wars sci-fi or, cute romance, we're going on a date. It still feels like suspension of disbelief, we're in our imagination. Something I've noticed about older foreign films, they're almost pseudo-documentation. They're almost pseudo-documentary. Like, they don't create these other worlds. They're showing you the real world and kind of real people doing real things. That allows me to want a messier, less conclusive ending, because it does almost feel like a more truthful depiction of real life, rather than, oh, I'm in fairy tale world escapism and I want maybe a point to the story, but at the end of the day, I still want there to be a conclusion. Where this just feels like almost just real life. So I'm really okay with it being non-linear, non-obvious, non-closure feeling type of movie. And I just, as I was saying, when I was giving my holy moment earlier, I kind of had that realization. I wanted to share that with you and the audience.
No, I think that's a very valuable thing to notice. And I mean, I feel like there are so many similarities, at least that I'm noticing, between Andrei Tarkovsky and Andrei Bazin, him and his holy moment, where he believed film was uniquely capable of capturing profundity in mundanity, great things in small moments. And for him, the trick was staying on a thing for a while, capturing real people, real events, things that aren't contrived, and that deep depth of field. That was something that he really preached. And we see all of that on display here, and to know that both were men of faith, it's cool. It's cool. My holy moment would have to be the person of Andrei Tarkovsky. His making of this movie, expressing themes that were so near and dear to him, in an environment where perhaps it was somewhat dangerous to do that. Him still feeling compelled to make his art, and through it make sense of the world. It took an incredible act of bravery. And I think we see that mirrored in the story of Andrei Rublev as well. And so I'm going to give my laurels to Andrei Tarkovsky in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And I just want to tack at the very end, because I was giving John, whose last name escapes me right now, the creator of Rent, probably too much flack at the beginning of the episode. Because there's a world in which him creating Rent was pushing against the status quo at the time. Making a movie about AIDS in America.
Yeah.
And so, maybe he wasn't facing as much backlash as Tarkovsky was in Soviet Russia. But again, still pushing against the status quo to make art in the face of something hard, which a huge theme in this movie. So just want to give some grace there.
Oh, for sure.
Well, sweet.
Well, with that, I think I'm going to give this a 4.3, maybe. I really have to watch it again. But
Yeah, I finished the film and I watched this like an hour and a half ago. I just finished it. And I really was walking away with like, yeah, it was pretty. Maybe there were some themes here and there. But I feel like I immediately walked away with like an annoyance of like, gosh, man, people are going to be like, this is 5 out of 5. And I don't understand why. And some movies that people love just aren't good. And I'm sorry. I think that's true. But I'm happy to say doing it like after like between the hour of this finishing in the podcast, doing some research, thinking about my own thoughts, and then having this conversation, I have such a deeper respect for the movie, and I'm really excited to actually go back and rewatch it. And so, yeah, I'm going to give this like a 4.4. I think this was really good. Again, I enjoyed every scene individually. It just was the connective tissue I need to zoom out and understand to really enjoy it all together. And so, really, really, really good movie.
And, you know, a lot of movies are better on rewatch. And what I mean by that is you watch it and yeah, it's hard to understand, but if you come into it knowing where it's going, you know what clues to look for.
Yeah. Oh,
and that's always gratifying. It's like, oh, so that's what this was leading up to that moment.
Mm-hmm. And
it's like putting a puzzle together.
I actually think most movies are not better on rewatch because I think most movies don't have not enough going on, because it's not just about having stuff going on, but I don't think enough movies are written and directed in a way that need a second rewatch, especially in the 21st century. Now, the movies that do need a rewatch absolutely deserve a rewatch, but so many movies, sure, you rewatch them because they're fun and entertaining. Pacific Rim, one of my favorite movies of all time, but if it's not like fun and entertaining and captivates you, most movies nowadays are like, you're not going to get a whole lot out of it on the second rewatch. Maybe one little twist and people are like, wow, I got that out of it. It's like, no, like this other movie just recontextualized itself completely if you rewatch it. That's a good film. But yes, I agree. I'm excited to rewatch this one day.
All right. With that being said, folks, we've got to spin a wheel.
We do. And usually I tell Jeffrey to cut this section out where I'm trying to find the wheel. But I figured, hey, while I'm trying to find the wheel, I might as well tell you guys something. And while I'm pulling this up, I'll just tell you guys should go watch Dungeons and Daddies. It's a great podcast. I'm loving it. That's all I have to say. I've been listening to a lot recently. Okay, the wheel has been pulled up. Oh, what do we got left? We got Singing in the Rain, Godzilla vs. Biollante, and Days of Heaven. Honestly, I'm fine with any of these, but I'm really hankering for Days of Heaven after watching this gorgeous movie with these gorgeous wide shots and so much movement within the frame. I mean, that's Days of Heaven. So let's see if we can get it. We're spinning, and next week we are watching the most opposite of Days of Heaven. We're watching Godzilla vs. Biollante.
I was gunning for Sing in the Rain, personally, but this should be fun.
Should be good. Hey, if we end the season on Days of Heaven, I have no sadness there. It's probably the one I was most excited to watch pretty much out of this entire season. I'm really excited to rewatch this one.
That would be a good one to end on. It's going to be a full circle moment, too, given our history with it. So.
Yeah, Jeffrey and I, made sweet, sweet love to that movie. No, we watched that together, and it was a good time. Well, that would be fun if we're able to go get some pizza and watch that one together. That would be a good movie to watch together.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. We will make it happen.
Yeah, every movie we've watched for the podcast that's been together has been at Jeffrey's place. Maybe you come to my place, watch a movie.
Hey, I mean, I'd be down if I'm free. We will make it happen.
Well, sweet.
Well, I should be more free in July because it's going to be a slow season. But.
I'm less free in July. It's a very busy season.
Ooh.
Well, we'll figure it out. My people will my Patreons will contract your Patreons.
All right, cool. Well, folks, thank you for watching. Follow us at the Holy Moment Podcast at gmail.com. Well, don't follow us there. Send us emails there. Give us feedback. And then follow us at our Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify. We love you. We miss you already. And good night.